everyone, this is our Supreme Court Webquest. My name is Meyer, and I'm doing this project with my partner Bryan, LaMonica. Let's jump right in. Melville Fuller is an American politician, lawyer, and jurist who served as the 8th Chief Justice of the United States of America. Let's talk about his early life. He was born in Augusta, Maine, 1833. His father was Frederick A. Fuller, and his mother was Catherine Weston. His parents divorced when he was 2 months old. He and his older brother grew up with their mother and her parents in Augusta, Maine. His father had eventually remarried, but provided no financial assistance. His education entailed attending Bowdoin College, studying at Harvard, moving to Chicago, and amongst all this, he studied law. He entered Bowdoin at 16 years of age and graduated Phi Beta Kappa from Bowdoin College in Brunswick. He then studied and read law after graduation and entered a 6-month class at Harvard Law School. Now, he was tempted to move further north of Maine for law. Instead, he moved west and studied politics and law in Chicago. From there, he also was elected into the Illinois House of Representatives in 1863. Now, his professional career. He began his career by managing Stephen Douglas's presidential campaign against Lincoln. You can probably figure out what had happened during that campaign. Now, he then served in the Illinois House of Representatives for the next 2 years. He had also maintained a legal practice by specializing in real estate. His presidential appointment entailed President Grover Cleveland naming Fuller Chief Justice. Once Cleveland was taken into office, he offered Fuller an appointment as Solicitor General, but Fuller declined and took the Chief Justice position. Fuller needed Senate confirmation, but had troubles due to lack of loyalty to the Union, and his sympathies towards bigger corporations was eventually approved by the Senate to Chief Justice. Let's talk about some major landmark cases. First, we have Plessy v. Ferguson. Fuller led the court case that ruled that racial segregation laws did not violate any part of the U.S. Constitution as long as each facilities for each race were equal in quality. The vote was 7-1. Up next, we have Gonzalez v. Williams. He wrote on the rights for Puerto Ricans, but more specifically, he had ruled that Puerto Ricans were not to be treated as quote-unquote aliens and could be granted entry into the United States. Now, some interesting facts. In his early life, Fuller was actually a newspaperman in Augusta for a very small time. Fuller was also elected as a Democrat to the Illinois Constitutional Convention of 1861 and to the Senate House of Representatives in 1862. Now, he had married his first wife, Callista Reynolds, from 1858 to 1864 until she had died of tuberculosis, whom he had 2 daughters with. He then remarried his spouse, Mary Ellen Coolbaugh, in 1866 and had 8 more children, although 7 of whom only survived childhood. Fuller eventually died in Sorrento, Maine from a heart attack aged 77. After serving 21 years as Chief Justice, he died on July 4th, 1910.
Our Supreme Court case was Keller versus the City of New London. The case originated with a development project in the Fort Trumbull area of New London, a small city in Connecticut. The case began when New London used its eminent domain authority to seize private property to sell to private developers. Suzette Keller and other people whose property was seized sued New London in state court because they believed that their Fifth Amendment right was being violated. The case was argued on February 22, 2005, where 7 members of the court sat for arguments. It was finally decided on June 23, 2005. New London resident Suzette Keller, who wanted justice for her property being taken away from eminent domain, took this case to court. The City of New London, Connecticut, was involved in defending the actions. Associate Justice Sandra Day O'Connor presided, as Chief Justice William Rehnquist was recuperating from medical treatment at home, and Associate Justice John Paul Stevens was delayed on his return to Washington from Florida. But both absent justices read the briefs and oral argument transcripts and participated in the case decision. A Connecticut resident, Suzette Kelo, was trying to prevent her property from getting taken away from her. She brought this to court because she argued that the city violated the Fifth Amendment's taking clause, which guaranteed the government will not take private property for public use without just compensation. She took it to court in order for her, along with other people who shall be affected by this amendment, to not get their property taken away from them when it is not deserved. This case went to the Supreme Court because the New London Development Corporation were thought to have misused its power of eminent domain. Kelo and the other appellants argued that economic development, the stated purpose of the Development Corporation, did not qualify as public use. The Fifth Amendment, which restricts the actions of the federal government, says that private property shall not be taken for public use without just compensation. Under Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, this limitation is also imposed on the actions of the U.S. state and local governments. Kelo v. New London was finally decided on June 23, 2005. The ruling on Kelo v. New London was 5-4. The decision by the Supreme Court was that the city's taking of private property to sell for private development did qualify as a public use within the meaning of the Takings Clause. The city was not taking the land simply to benefit a certain group of private individuals, but was following an economic development plan where these justifications for land takings, the majority argued, should be given deference. The Fifth Amendment did not require literal public use, the majority said, but the broader and more natural interpretation of public use as public purpose. The impact that this had on society is that public use is no longer confined to its literal meaning of used by the public. The term now encompasses anything that could deal with the public benefit or general welfare. After Kelo v. New London, Georgia's laws were changed to give the government redevelopment powers, which includes the power to sell or dispose property obtained by eminent domain to private enterprise for private use. This was written into Georgia's Constitution, which now provides that the development of trade, commerce, industry, and employment opportunities is a public purpose vital to the welfare of the people of this state. The court's decision eliminates for public use from the Takings Clause because it allows for incidental public benefit from ordinary private use of property.